As an arborist, I see trees in a different way than most people. The way I see trees are natural works of arts. They're things that add value to your homes and properties. They're also great habitat for animals, and they sequester carbon and bring oxygen to our air, so they're great for the whole environment. So what I want to talk about today are things that drive me nuts when people don't take care of trees properly. Let's get to it. In our arboriculture, it's huge. And there's a lot of people out there that when they take care of trees, they ruin them by just grabbing chainsaws and saws and chopping them all over. If a property owner just asks them to cut it at a line, they'll do that. In tree care, there are so many techniques that you can use to help preserve a tree and make it safe for the long term. What I'm going to talk about now are trimming techniques that really drive me nuts. A method that I really hate is called heading cuts. It is actually a form of topping. So what heading cuts are is when someone will go and kind of draw a shape on the tree, and what they do is just make blunt cuts. They might even shape it to be round. They're like smaller cuts, but they're throughout the tree. Actually, that's a topping cut. And what that does is cause the tree to react. When you take terminal ends off of a tree, now the tree grows thicker. So in heading cuts, when you do that, you go and cut it all the way around the tree, now the tree responds by more growth. The tree gets thicker, it has more of a wind sail. So now what happens is when windstorms come, there's going to be a sail on that tree. So you're going to have more torque on the trunk, and if you get some strong winds, sometimes it can even help a tree to blow over. So heading cuts is something that shouldn't be done at all. And people think that it's fine and the tree looks great, but actually you also stress it out. So maybe your tree won't last as long. Large topping cuts, that's something that I hate to see. With large topping cuts, you cause a tree to open up for decay, and everything that will be growing from the topping cuts is going to be weakly attached. It not only does that, once you do that to a tree, to make all these large topping cuts, it's going to react in force, growing more green. So what you'll probably find is that inside areas on the bark, you'll see all these actually buds start sprouting out where there was never buds before. And in the root system, some trees will sprout little trees all over from the roots. And that damage that you cause to it will be in that tree for the rest of its life. It's not going to go away. So the branches that are going to fall are weakly attached. It's more of a risk to people. Topping is one of the worst things that you can do. Also, when you do top a tree, it takes all of the shade away. Actually, the leaves actually protect the tree. So you do this topping cut, and in the summertime, you can get something called sun scald. And what that does is it kills the top layer of bark on trees, and that's going to be there for life. So now you can make some of the branches more weak. Topping is something that's horrible, and it should never be done to trees. There's something called lion tailing. It's kind of crazy because if you look at a tree from a distance that's been lion tailed, it might look okay. But lion tailing is not a good practice. It really makes the trees have more stress. What it is you cut all the side branches off, and then you leave kind of green poofs on the ends. So the tree reacts the same way as it would if it were topped. May grow thicker and put out more fruit, and branches might break under a wind load, especially because everything's on the end. Now it's not balanced. You can get some wind blowing, and now branches could snap off. So lion tailing is something that really drives me nuts. When people take all of the side branches off a tree, it ruins the balance. So imagine you have a tree and all the branches are taken off, and then there's just a little green on top. That's raising a tree way too high. A tree has structure branches, and they're meant to be there. When you take those large branches off, it opens up the tree to infection and decay. It makes it a weaker tree. So they should have balance. If you imagine that if you just have green on top, now you have windstorms, it puts so much pressure on that trunk. Having those extra branches on the tree, that reduces the wind load on the whole entire tree, and it's more of a balanced tree, and it can weather windstorms a lot easier rather than just taking all the side branches and leaving a little green on top. That's something I really hate to see. I hate flush cuts. What that is, when the trimmers are trimming, they cut into something called a branch bark ridge. What the branch bark ridge is It's an area on the branch. It's like a little area that's bumped up and there's a shoulder behind it. So when you're trimming, you want to stay outside of that. What happens is there is an area of energy that can help callus the branch over. And what that can do is encapsulate the damage that you cause when you trim. Because every time you trim, you are wounding the tree for life. But the better you cut the branch outside the branch bark wedge, that tree can possibly callus over and help make it a like thicker, stronger branch. What people do is they cut inside of that branch bark ridge, and now it opens up that branch forever and it starts to decay, and now you can have tunneling in that branch, like a tube in the branch, and it could cause it to be a weak branch. I hate flush cuts. The lack of care when the trimmers are in the tree and they're trimming. You got trimmers that go into the tree and they're all geared up. They look like they know what they're doing. They have all the proper gear, but they get up into the tree and with their chainsaw, they're cutting everywhere in the world. And as they're cutting, they're nicking the trunk. That's actually opening up the tree to infection also. So, instead of making these nice clean cuts, they're nicking and cutting deep into some of the branches. Also, when they're cutting, they're trying to do their finish cuts. They make a cut and the branch rips and it rips into the trunk. That's horrible because that little rip area can cause that tree to be an area of infection and it will also decay. Lack of care throughout the canopy is something that I hate. I really hate to see that, and I wish it wouldn't be done at all. Here in California, we have plenty of palm trees. What really drives me nuts are when trimmers trim improperly. You think, how can you trim a palm tree wrong? It's horrible to see. Actually, they take all the fronds off and they leave it like a carrot top. That's completely wrong. What you want to see in a palm tree trimming is having the fronds go at a 9 3. So if you had a clock, you'll see the branches will go 9 3 and they're going to be horizontal. That's the most, or the highest you should trim a palm, not completely take it to looking like a carrot top. It's a horrible thing to see. It really stresses a palm out and it's not good. That's something I really hate when people do that. Another form of maintenance done on palm trees is called skinning. What skinning is the removal of all the dead petiole bases on the trunk. If you do it right, it really could be a really handsome looking tree. The trunk really can, some trunks have a diamond cut and some just have a nice looking bark, if you will. The thing is, when people have a lack of knowledge when they're skinning. So what you want to do is you skin all the way up to the top and you'll stay maybe 3 feet from the terminal. What happens is when people skin the palm too high and they do it for a number of years, it will actually decrease the thickness of the trunk. And if that continues to happen, that can get smaller and smaller. The leaves can even reduce in size and it can ruin the structure of that palm. And it could also become fatal and might kill your palm. That's something that I really hate to see. In tree care, we have so many techniques on climbing with ropes. There's so many advancements. There's so many things you can do while you're climbing in trees that don't harm the trees. What really irks me is when people put spikes on to climb trees that they're going to trim, especially if they're not a very big tree. So instead of throwing and using techniques that are fully available and really are better for your body and things that it's just a better way to trim a tree and maintain them. People who put spikes on and just spike up a tree, it really causes, you can have like infections from that. It's really not good for the tree and it's really poor technique. That really drives me nuts. I can't tell you how many times I'm driving down the road and I see a tree crew working and they have absolutely no safety gear. And that really drives me nuts. In this profession, it's one of the most dangerous professions in America. It really drives me nuts when people don't pay attention to safety. They're out there without a helmet. They might be, no safety glasses, going up a ladder, not tied in. That really gives arborists a bad name. I would really like to see people in this field and maybe bring it to a higher level. But having those people who are out there just with no safety gear, just doing horrible things to trees, it's the worst thing, and I really hate to see that. I really enjoy planting small trees, but what really drives me nuts is after you've done these brand new planting, and what happens next are you got landscapers who come behind you and they're really not paying attention. You would think that they're in landscape and they are skilled at what they do, but they really don't pay attention. And with their weed eaters, they go around the base of a young tree, you know, cut the cambium all the way around, or with their mowers, they drive up to it and they nick the trunk with their mower, knocking the bark off. Well, that cambium layer is important to that young tree. What happens is when you take that cambium layer off, you're killing that baby tree slowly. So you think about it, if you planted a tree and it costs $500 and you have it in the ground, that tree could be a lifetime investment actually. But when you have someone who weed eats around it and it kills it slowly, that whole investment you started putting, your time, your money, it's gonna die slowly and now you won't have a tree. That's a horrible thing to do, and it happens all the time, more than you think. People just get around that tree and with a weed eater, they cut it. And in time, it could even be 5 years down the line, that tree's dead. And you're like wondering why. That's something that really drives me nuts. I really like to see new developments when they have a landscape plan and they put everything together. What I really don't like is when they put the wrong tree in the wrong place. And what I mean by that is that they'll get a tree that can grow 50, 60 foot wide canopy, and they'll put it in a spot that only has 10 foot of room. So you got a landscape designer and they go and design all this stuff. They've gone to school and they understand how these plants grow, but then they put these trees in these spots that aren't gonna last long. Maybe the root space, it could be a 3 by 3 foot planter, and they put a camphor tree. And if you know a camphor, its root structure can be at least a 5 foot diameter trunk flare. And you're gonna put it in a tree well that's only 3 feet. That's just horrible. So you know that in time, that tree's not gonna last. Trees are meant to be for almost a lifetime, right? But when you put the wrong tree in the wrong place, it's horrible. Or you put a tree next to a building and it's too close. So when it grows and the wind blows, the tree starts hitting the building. Things like that really drive me nuts. It's just a horrible idea, and now that we have all these advancements in knowing what trees should do, we should be better at it. People get the impression that trees are like grass, that you sprinkle a little bit of water on them and it'll keep them alive. Trees aren't. When it comes to watering trees, you have to water them slowly. You know, a grass, you put sprinklers on it and they only have a 4-inch root system. Well, that's okay. But you put a new tree, what you have to do is water it slowly. So you put a hose near the tree and you turn it on slowly and you water it maybe 20 minutes. But what that does is it lets the water percolate into the soil and get into the root system. When you do that, you do it like once a week, especially if it's hot. Now you'll be able to water that tree and maybe it'll survive. But if you think it's just like lawn, it's gonna end up dying through a hot season. So something like watering your trees properly would be a great thing to do. I'm going to end this video by talking about the clients and maybe the people who aren't in tree care, who refuse to understand proper tree care techniques. You know, like when they ask you to do a trim job by maybe topping the tree and cutting the side branches, and when you let them know you can't, they get really angry at you. Well, hopefully they pay attention to what we've said in this video, and maybe we'll research a little bit more about it, and then they let us trim the trees in the proper way. And that way, the areas that they live in will be safer for everybody around them, and maybe the trees can last a lot longer. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Take care. We'll see you next time.